Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another Soulsborne boss tier list. It's been like a month or two since I did one, and upon noticing that I thought, hey, why don't I do the next one? It's not like I have anything better to do with my time. And besides, we're finally here at Bloodborne, which many people still consider to be the best Soulsborne game, even after Elden Ring's come out. And I don't think anyone can deny that it's, well, definitely one of their best, and has some of the best bosses of any game they've released. I don't know how much that's saying, though, considering that, frankly, for the most part, their bosses just seem to kind of get better overall with time. But I digress. My criteria for how I rank these bosses is in the previous videos in this playlist, but in general, all you need to know is that for the most part, I'm just kind of ranking how much I like these bosses. Even if they're not the most mechanically complex thing ever, if there's just something about the boss that I really like, I'll probably rank them quite high. And if, perhaps even from a mechanical perspective, they're very good, if I find fighting them to be unenjoyable, I'll probably rank them a little bit lower. Now, I've put the Chalice Dungeon bosses here just sort of to get them out of the way, because generally speaking, I don't think most people kind of take them into consideration when they talk about the bosses in the game, especially since a lot of them are not unique boss encounters. A lot of them are just enemy reskins, or not even reskins, really. That's just enemies given a big boss health bar. So I'm going to try to get most of these out of the way very quickly so that we can get on to the main event. These aren't in any real particular order, I just kind of threw them back in here. Most of the main game bosses are bad in the order you would encounter them, and then we have the DLC last. So starting off, we have the Watchdog of the Old Lords. I like this boss. I'm pretty sure most people like this boss. I think it caps off the first of the Chalice Dungeons. Overall, it's a fun, big beast battle. I like that you're able to break its head to do more damage to it, even though it's an area that usually doesn't take more damage, and standing in front of it's really dangerous. So I would say it's probably somewhere up here in quality. Yeah, I'd at least put it above Nashka. Then we have the Tumerian Elder, who is kind of the other end of the spectrum, and that it's a pretty solid humanoid boss, though I don't think it has most of the complexity that a lot of the other ones do. I would say this one is still pretty solid. Yeah, we'll put it around there somewhere. Next we have the Keeper of the Old Lords, a boss that has a very special place in my heart simply because its design absolutely slaps. The Ashen Bone set is one of my personal favorites in the game. I always have to restrain myself to not wear it every time I do a playthrough. I'd say they probably go somewhere around here. Oh wait, no, that's a little too high. Is it actually? Yeah, we'll put him around here. Well, they'll go there. You're gonna notice that most of the Bloodborne bosses rank pretty high. As I mentioned before, though, the overall boss quality floor gets a bit higher as each FromSoft game goes on. So we're gonna start getting a lot more bosses here in, like, quality and up. Next we have the Lauren Dark Beast. I don't really remember much about this boss, other than that it's probably kind of like the same as the normal Dark Beast. I think it scales higher because it's in Loran. Other than that, I don't really remember anything about it. We have the Tumerian Descendant, who I'm pretty sure is very much just like the Tumerian Elder, but he just has a bit of a different moveset. I'll just put him right there with them. The Undead Giant, which I'm pretty sure is the first Chalice Dungeon boss, he is a pretty solid big enemy. He has, like... Is it this one? I don't think they're including any of the other variants on here. So, taking those into consideration, it probably goes, like, around here, I would say. Somewhere in this tier. Yeah, somewhere around here. Because some of the variants are good. Some of them are a bit batshit insane, like the ball on chain one. You know that one that just its entire body is basically a giant flail, and it moving around will take off like half of your health bar. Yeah, that thing's a little bit much. Next, we have the Abhorrent Beast, who, if I remember correctly, is like a fairly solid little like combat encounter. You know, he's a quirky little windy electric guy. At least in the Chalice Dungeon. He doesn't really have any of the context of the one you fight up in the woods. That one's obviously much more interesting from like a story perspective, whereas this one's just kind of here. But he's neat. Next we have the Bloodletting Beast, who has two variants, one of which does not have a head and instead has like a giant vermin thing sticking out of it. I don't remember how, if at all, that one alters the fight. Bloodletting Beast is pretty good overall, but it suffers from one big problem. I would say one big problem, and then maybe another one that's maybe a little bit of an issue, is that it's fucking big. It's really big, and as is usually an issue with really big bosses in FromSoft games, is that the camera doesn't cooperate with them. The camera's not really designed for fighting an enemy that's significantly larger than you, at least one that's that big. So it makes it kind of hard to figure out what exactly it's doing. And that's a bit of a problem when you have a boss like this that hits like a freight train. I think there was some questionable stuff with his hitboxes on like his big punch that will go the entire way across the arena. I would say probably goes like around, I don't know, probably still like around here, I suppose. Next we have the Merciless Watchers. They're alright, I guess. They're okay. There's not really too much to say about them. They are, well, really, just kind of like some enemies that you encounter in the Chalice Dungeons, and then it's like, what if there were 3 of them, and they all had boss health bars? Wouldn't that be something? I mean, I guess it would definitely be a thing. I'd say they probably go, like, down around here. Yeah, not very interesting. Like, they're not bad per se. They're alright, because the enemies are alright, and they're seemingly somewhat designed to be fought together, unlike some gank bosses. Which I don't think there are any of in this game, fortunately. You know, not the terrible ones. But they're very borderline. Next we have the Forgotten Madman. They are literally just a hunter enemy. So they go in lazy, but they go with top lazy, because the hunter enemies are alright. They have some balancing issues occasionally, but still, they just threw a hunter NPC and called it a boss. Oh, this is where we start getting into the lazy ungodly section with all of these just random enemies that were made bosses for some reason. Yeah, we put them around here, because they're not terrible. They don't have horribly broken mechanics or are obnoxious to fight, but they're just normal enemies that have been thrown in a boss arena and given a health bar. It's really lazy. You could have removed those bosses from the chalices entirely, and I don't think it would have made any difference whatsoever, honestly. Last but not least, we have Yharnam, the Guardian of the Platinum Trophy, because you have to go through all of the main Chalice Dungeons to get to her. When it comes to being a boss, she's, I would say she's pretty solid. I'd say she's pretty good, all things considered. Not anything too crazy, but pretty solid, pretty good. Now, we're finally here, after almost 10 minutes, to the actual main game bosses, starting off with what's effectively the tutorial boss, which is, funnily enough, an optional boss, the Cleric Beast. He's pretty good. Okay, I mean, he's, nothing really too crazy about him, but, he serves his purpose quite well. I would probably put him around here. Actually, no, I'd probably put him above quite a few of these guys, because he doesn't really have any problems. He doesn't have any problems, really. He does a very good job at teaching you the mechanics, teaching you how to fight big beast bosses. He has the limb-breaking mechanic, which is great. You can get viscerals on his head. He's very good. I don't think there's really anything wrong with him except maybe the arena. Just, sometimes you get caught on stuff and it can be a bit annoying. He just doesn't really have anything crazy that puts him up higher on the list. He's just a big beast. Then we have a guy who definitely goes a little bit higher on the list. The first mandatory boss of the game, Father Gascoigne, and the first of our hunter bosses. So, really good. Really good. And really goddamn hard. He's like the Margit of Bloodborne, and that FromSoft was being mildly psychotic when they decided to put a boss this aggressive and with this many sort of mechanics going on as the first mandatory boss of the game, because even after having played the game for years, I still think Gascoigne's kind of hard. When I'm just trying to get through the game really quickly, I do that fucking headstone cheese. But he's really good mechanics-wise. He's really good narrative-wise. Like, he has an actual story for his character that plays out through Central Yharnam as you interact with his daughter. You're searching for her mom. You know that her dad is a hunter. You run into him and find out he's lost his mind. He ends up transforming into a beast. You have the implementation of the music box, which brings back a bit of his sanity and makes him realize what he's done. And then, you have the ramifications of the fight after the fact. The moral conundrum of what to do there. Most certainly a top quality fight. I would say probably above Sif, maybe. Yeah, around there. I should also remind you all that each boss's ranking is, generally speaking, relative to the game that it's in. Because if we were comparing them all by the same standard, well, all of the Demon Souls bosses would be down here in, like, the lower half, and then, like, all of the Dark Souls 3 bosses would be here at the top. So, yeah. Next we have the Bloodstarved Beast, who absolutely ruins every new player, and then every subsequent playthrough afterwards, they're, like, pretty easy, albeit mildly heart attack inducing if you're, like, kinda slipping a little bit. They're pretty solid, I would say. They're pretty good. I'd probably put them, like, around here. Next we have Vicar Amelia, our first mandatory big beast boss, who also caps off, like, the first act of the game. Me personally, I don't really have too much to say about her. Like, I think she's solid. I just don't think she really has anything that super sticks out to me like a lot of the other bosses do. Got the good limb-breaking mechanic. It's good that they have the implementation of things you find in the area before, like with the numbing mist. I like that. But outside of that, she doesn't really have anything too crazy going on. Next, we have the Witch of Hemwick, which, it's just really fucking boring. It's not even, like, adorable like the Covetous Demon is. Like, the Covetous Demon sucks. It just fucking flops around everywhere. But it's cute. That's what puts it above King Allant. Witch of Hemwick goes above King Allant because they're not the fucking final boss of their game. Next we have Dark Beast Parl, who, just kind of goes here with the Lauren Dark Beast. But isn't a reskin. No, Lauren isn't even a reskin. Just a reuse. I just put them there. Next we have Amygdala, who's like, okay, I guess. They suffer some camera issues occasionally. They're fine. They're okay. Yeah, I'd put them around there. Martyr Logarius. Okay, this is a boss I do not hear talked about nearly enough. Because Martyr Logarius slaps. That OST, very good. The build-up to the fight, that intro cutscene, outstanding. The arena for the fight, up on top of this wind-swept, snowy rooftop in a Victorian castle, fighting against this zombie guy who's using, like, ghost blood magic with a scythe and a sword. It's really cool. And he's basically just a big hunter fight, but with magic. Thus, you know, for various other reasons that I'm not going to spend, like, 10 minutes trying to talk about. Certified top quality, if you ask me. Next we have the Shadows of Yharnam, who are another pretty good gank boss. Because they seem to be, you know, kind of designed around the fact that you're fighting more than one of them. I don't think any of their AI are, like, too aggressive, so you're, like, constantly getting swamped by them. They're not always attacking you at the same exact time. You have the giant headstone in the arena to divide them up. Then, you know, as you get one of their health bars really low, they do their snake transformation. Usually you'll have killed one of them by then. Then by the time you've about killed a second one of them starts doing the big snake summon and shit. They're pretty good. They are a pretty good multi-enemy boss. Now we have Rom. Rom is not a very fun fight. It's those goddamn spider summons. They're obnoxious. Rom stays just a bit above this tier just because, well, they're not as bad as the bosses that are in here. They have a little bit more mechanical complexity. If you are patient and just take your time, you can just kill off all the spiders and then just smack Rom and then rinse and repeat. But that's not a very fun experience. Next we have the Celestial Emissary. There's really not much to them. It's funny when you hit it with the Shaman Boneblade and then all of the fake ones start attacking the boss. But they don't really have much going on for them other than that. So, like, I'll throw them, like, down around, I don't know, Phalanx or something. Abridis, your big secret boss at the end of the choir area, the upper cathedral ward. Abridis' design is interesting to say the least. The environment is pretty atmospheric. Moveset's solid. Some of her moves I think are a little questionable. Like her grab. That grab sometimes feels like a little bullshit. Like, the hitbox on that sometimes, I don't know, Chief. I don't know. Sometimes that thing seems a little questionable. I don't think being around her induces frenzy. I think it just does damage, doesn't it? I can't remember. It's been a little bit. But, you know, she gets a damage field in the second phase, which is like a little, And then she gets the, big star attack thing. The name is escaping me right now. Which is incredibly lethal, but if you know what you're doing, it's not the hardest thing in the world to dodge. Overall, I would say Abridis is a pretty good boss. Pretty solid. Actually, a little bit more than pretty solid. They're pretty good. They're very good, actually. The One Reborn, they are like Tower Knight, but nowhere near as cool. And also, just kind of have a bunch of slap-happy spam shit. So, I throw them, like, kind of down around here. They're another one that's a little borderline. They have some enjoyable aspects to them. You know, like, fighting them isn't a total slog. They have, like, enough redeeming qualities, I suppose. Actually, if I'm arguing with myself this much, we're just gonna fucking throw them down here or something. They're just a less good callback to Tower Knight. Mikolash. Do I need to explain it? Do I need to explain anything? No, I don't. I don't need to explain a thing about that one. Murgo's Wet Nurse. They're pretty basic. They're cool as shit. But their moveset's really basic, and you can just kind of, like, constantly attack them without much issue. The second phase is a little spooky, but other than that, I'd say they probably go, like, around Gurman. Okay. It's time. Ooh. Gurman is a perfect boss. I am torn between him and Ishin. Yes, him and Ishin being the best final boss in a Soulsborne game. The build up to this fight is perfect. Everything we've learned about Gurman and his experiences, his tormented existence throughout the game is wonderful. The setting for the fight, you know, fighting on this field of flowers beneath the full moon under the great tree with the burning hunter's workshop in the background, surrounded by crucifixes and the gravestones of hunters past. Tonight, Gehrman joins the hunt. His moveset is absolutely fantastic. Can you abuse the parry mechanic a bit? Yes. But, generally speaking, you can't really just do parry spam. He can do it a bit when he does, like, the scimitar flurry thing. I think that's the one that's, like, generally the easiest to get a parry on. But I don't think he's, like, super abusable when it comes to the parries. Then you have the music. Oh. I would say the first Hunter is still maybe the most beautiful track FromSoft has ever had in one of their games. It is so good. A genuine masterpiece. It is, for all of these factors combined, that Gurman is the first boss in this entire list that clears the Bible. I am very certain of this placement. I would say, just to spoil you a little bit on the rest of the list for this video, Gurman's probably my favorite boss in the game. Yes, the DLC bosses, oh my god, are they good. And arguably, mechanically, they're better than Gurman. But it's not just the mechanics that puts Gurman in this tier for me. It's everything else that goes into Gurman that puts him here for me. So now, we move on to the actual final boss, the secret final boss. You know, if you're the secret final boss, I would argue you're not really the actual final boss. I'd say Gurman, generally speaking, is the real final boss. Moon Presence is more a reward for you doing, like, a bunch of snooping around and finding out about the Chords of the Eye. They're pretty decent. They're decent. Their moveset's pretty alright. Some of their special moves are a bit spooky, you know, blocking out your healing, reducing your HP to 1, doing those things like one after the other, reducing you to 1 HP and preventing you from healing is mildly terrifying. But, you know, you can usually hit them to get your health back, and they just kind of stand around after they do that, so it's not that big of a deal. I would say Moon Presence goes like around, somewhere around here. Yeah, somewhere around there. Now we get into the DLC. Peak Bloodborne. You know, the stretch of Peak Bloodborne. The content that the game feels incomplete without. And we start off with Ludwig, who many people would disagree with me in placing Gurman in the top and would say Ludwig is actually the best boss. And he is, most certainly, fucking fantastic. You have all of the establishment for Ludwig in the main game. You understand his importance. You know what a noble, important figure he was. And then you find him here, turned into the most disgusting, horribly grotesque beast you have ever seen. Now, if there were any sort of complaints I could have about Ludwig, is that I'd say some of his moves are a little bit questionable. His bite flurry. You know when he starts, like, blowing smoke out of his mouth and does, like, a bunch of bites in a row? I'm pretty sure that one's usually, like, a little... something about that move seems a bit off. A little bit unreasonable. The wall crawling. That one's a little borderline, but after enough time fighting Ludwig, you can get the timing down for the dodge on that, so, you know, it's not unforgivable. And then we get Phase 2. The only boss ever to really use the Moonlight Greatsword. The music swell, the transition cutscene, the name change. Ooh. Oh, it's all so fucking good. It's all so good. And his moveset's great. His moveset's fantastic. I don't think he has any moves in Phase 2 that I think have any sort of problems whatsoever. The big line attack, you know, where he takes the sword, he does the AoE, and then he slams it down into the ground. That one could be a little borderline when it comes to the tracking, but if you know what you're doing, you can generally avoid it. Anyway, you all know Ludwig goes up here. I mean, there's no fucking question about that. I mean, come on now. Come on now. Lawrence. Lawrence goes in this tier for a variety of reasons. A wide variety of reasons. For starters, he's a reskin. An actual reskin this time. What if we took the Cleric Beast? Like, the exact same Cleric Beast model. He's even got, like, the same nails stuck in his leg and everything. And we lit him on fire. Yes. And then we made him endgame scaled. Okay, interesting. And his moves in the first phase are exactly the same? Yup. Except they have fire trails and shitty hitboxes. I see. What about Phase 2? Oh, well, this is the part where we actually add in new things. His ass explodes, and he starts crawling around on the ground, shooting out fiery explosive diarrhea everywhere, leaving a trail that your character can't stand in. And he just fucking crawls around all the time. And every time he moves his hand, it causes a fire explosion that does, like, a third of your health and has shitty hitboxes. And when he moves around a lot, so he's probably just gonna stun lock you to death. He sucks. He is the worst kind of difficult boss. A boss that's difficult because it's unfair. Next, we have the Living Failures. They are okay. You know, they're an okay gank boss. They can be a little bit tedious, depending on what you've got going on with your character. Like, if you're doing an arcane build, in my experience, they suck. But, you know, they're not the worst thing ever. I'd like throw them around here or something. They're pretty solid overall. And their OST slaps. I assume it's because they're a fairly overlooked boss, but the Living Failures OST is actually one of the best in the game. Speaking of best in the game, Lady Maria. Arguably the best hunter fight, but Gehrman exists, so haha, yeah. Setup to her fight's great. You know, you're basically getting set up for her throughout the entirety of the research hall. All of the patients seem to know Maria. They're calling out to her. She's someone that they look up to and believe in. They rely on her. You get to her and she's fucking dead. But she survived because this is a nightmare, so she's not dead in here yet. Moveset, it's a hunter boss, which means it's great. Then, you add in the blood attacks. Ooh, now things get a little bit kooky. They get a little bit crazy. Now she's got, like, blood lasers and ranged slashes and shit all over her attacks. That spices things up quite a bit. But do you know what would make it even spicier? If the blood was on fire for some reason. Yeah, and the OST slaps. And Maria's character is very tragic and interesting, and her relationship with Gehrman adds another element to his character. And it gives more context for the doll existing. You all know it. Lady Maria is also a peak boss. Now then, last, fortunately not least, we have the Orphan of Cause, who, for the longest time, was arguably the hardest Soulsborne boss ever. Recently dethroned. How highly do people usually rate the Orphan of Cause in terms of quality, in terms of how much they enjoy it? Because for me personally, I like the boss. I think it's really good. But I don't love the boss. I think there are maybe a few reasons for this. One is probably just because he is such a challenge that it almost becomes hard for me to enjoy him. Also, he has infinite stamina, which is like kind of cheating a little bit. He can just kind of do things forever. And some of his combos and stuff, especially in that second phase, are a little bit much. Maybe it's just because he's just so fucking intimidating. He scares the shit out of me. I'm incredibly nervous every time I fight him, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like that's probably the intention, is that you're supposed to be pretty on edge when you fight the Orphan. But I don't think it really has a lot of the sort of like emotional beats that some of the other fights give me to like really elevate him up. Because even if a fight is really good, if it lacks in some of the oomph that comes from bosses like Gurman or Ludwig or Maria, it just doesn't get elevated to that level for me. But even still, the Orphan of Cause is undeniably a very good boss. I would put it around here. Around there. And so with that, that's every boss in Bloodborne. What did you guys think? Do you disagree with my rankings? Do you agree with them? What would your own personal rankings of the Bloodborne bosses be? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. I'm very eager to see what you guys have to say. But with that, that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my uploads. I'm currently going through another Elden Ring playthrough. I'm going to be uploading more of these, and eventually, at some point in the future, after I'm done with the Elden Ring playthrough, we'll get back to those good old Elden Ring lore discussions. So, you know, if you're interested in those, definitely be sure to subscribe, and also join my Discord. I have that link down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.